Welcome to Amusing Jews, where we celebrate Jewish contributors and contributions to American popular culture. I'm Jonathan Friedmann.
And I'm Joey Angelfield.
Producer engineer Mike Tomren is working somewhere behind the scenes. Amusing Jews is a project of Adat Chaverim, Congregation for Humanistic Judaism, the Shul Jewish Cultural Community, and Atheists United Studios. Well, Joey, it's Festivus, or as I like to call it, the other Jewish winter holiday. The Festivus for the rest of us, introduced to the world in the 1997 season 9 episode of Seinfeld, The Strike. Festivus has gradually become a real annual holiday, observed by those who observe it on December 23rd. Conceived as an alternative to the commercialism of Christmas and Hanukkah, although Hanukkah is not mentioned out loud on the Seinfeld episode, the holiday involves the airing of grievances, feats of strength, an aluminum pole, a Festivus dinner, and of course, the recounting of Festivus miracles. I was big into Seinfeld during high school. I didn't go to synagogue much, hardly ever, if I had my choice, but I never missed Seinfeld on Thursday night. That was my sacred time. Seinfeld scratched my Jewish itch, a show that was very Jewish, but never explicitly and certainly not religiously Jewish. It was a show like me, a secular, cultural, ethnic American Jew. Watching Seinfeld, my couch was the pew, the TV was the altar, and time was the sacrifice.
Nicely said. Celebrating Festivus with us today is Harris Shore, an actor, writer, and director who takes his place in American pop culture as the original live-action Mario of the Donkey Kong commercials for ColecoVision circa 1981, and as the original Mr. Lippman on Seinfeld in the 1991 episode The Library. He's currently making the film festival circuit with his award-winning short film, The Trust. Harris, thanks for joining us.
Hello. Thanks for having me on your maiden voyage with Amusing Jews.
Thank you so much for being here, Harris. It's always great to see you. And we couldn't think of a better guest to have with us talking about Festivus, talking about Seinfeld. I have 14 words, very famous words to share with you, and I wonder if you can place them for us. Elaine, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Marie, this water is still too cold.
Don't tell me. That's me playing Mr. Lippman in the episode of The Library on Seinfeld, 1992-ish, right in there. So it's 30 years ago. Oh my gosh! And that's where the words come from.
I'm impressed with that scene. I just watched the episode again earlier today, and your presence looms large in the episode. Elaine is frantic. She's paranoid. You're her boss. She wants to impress you. You don't seem that interested in what she's doing. She feels like she's being neglected in the company. She's very, as I mentioned, anxious. And you make one little appearance, in the flesh, as it were, and you've got just a few lines to say, and you do it perfectly. It's a great, memorable scene, but that's all you get. I'm wondering, as an actor, if that's maybe more challenging to kind of nail it and milk it, that little scene that you have, than it might have been if you were, on the episode, even in the show itself, more frequently.
Good question. I'll answer your question indirectly with, I had a friend, he used to work all the time, nice parts, and it was getting slower for him. And his agent said, look, go up on this one line. It might turn into be something else. He couldn't remember the line during the shoot. He couldn't remember the line. He probably had something like, why am I here? I've done, bigger work than this. And for me, I'll tell you, what people don't know is that when I auditioned for it, the scene was like 2 pages long. It was a pretty lengthy scene for half-hour television. And I think they did that because they were planned for that character to recur. And so what I felt I needed to do was establish character, know what I was doing before I came in, know my relationship with Elaine, and what I did or didn't want from Elaine. I mean, I think if I had to make it up now, I don't know what I was thinking 30 years ago, but that could have been like the 10th thing she gave me to read. And she, it's to get her, she wants to get a raise. She wants to move up in the company. And I'm oblivious or I'm distracted. So it was a fun shoot.
I did also hear you say that you did something silly that day. I don't know if this would be a good time to mention that or if we should go back to that some other point.
Well, I did. You're a sharp guy. And I look back on it and, sometimes an actor goes, I missed a moment. I missed a moment. And I was getting ready for my entrance and I grabbed the doorknob, but it was not the door to the set. It was a fake, firm, secure door that didn't open. And I started shaking the door. And my hindsight goes, I could have had a long run as Mr. Lippman if I'd have gone, Elaine, I'm stuck and I'm in the closet. And she was going, Mr. Lippman's in the closet, but missed opportunity. But other than that, it was a great shoot and just wonderful actors. All the guest stars were just tip top.
And you actually got to spend some time getting to know all of those, all of the actors?
No, not really. I mean, when I shot my scene, it was pretty much just us kids. I mean, we did it live. I have to think back. I did not, no, because I was like in my dressing room when the others were working, and then we were released. So that's pretty much how that was.
Do you remember at the time if that character of Mr. Lippman was going to be a recurring character, or if you had the sense that this was just going to be your one shot? And of course, the character does develop with another actor, and you can maybe talk about that. But what was your kind of motivation in that scene or in your role? Did you feel like you were going to be doing it more often?
Well, knowing Jeff, my manager, and knowing that it was a new show, a new character, I'm sure they said, Mr. Lippman's we're aiming for him to recur. And they do that all the time. But I think in that particular situation, they knew that Mr. Lippman was going to come back. A very fine actor named Richard Fancy took over the role. To this day, I don't know why. Did it bother me? Not really. I was devastated for 20 years. But other than that, they were great people to work with. And I'm so glad I did it. I
know that you have made a name for yourself singing the national anthem at Dodgers games. And when you're announced to do that, I believe it always says over the loudspeaker, the original Mr. Lippman. Am I correct about that?
That's what they chose to do. They said to me, well, how do you want to be introduced? And I've been blessed with a couple of nice moments in my career. But that seemed to be what most people would identify me, how they would identify me, or as, Mario from Donkey Kong, which, boy, that was so much fun. But I can get tangential or go off in that.
Yeah. Well, that was now 40 years ago, talking about the Mario commercials.
1982. Yeah.
You are the original live action Mario, right? And at that time, the character of Mario was not the character that we have grown with, over the past 40 years, who's developed into a real franchise and a personality and everything else. What was it like coming to this kind of empty character and trying to breathe life into it? You mentioned you sensed that he was Italian, but beyond that, what did they tell you, or what did you kind of bring to it?
Well, I did know. I'm sure he was Italian. I knew he was from back east, blue collar. He was a plumber. This is a girlfriend he might have been dating for, 10 years, but he never had enough guts to ask her to get married, So, he had just one girlfriend. I'm true to my girlfriend, but we're going to go out Saturday night and she's all dressed up, ready to go. And, but there's this game and I'm stuck with this game. And we're on the couch and it's the very first handheld video game, even more advanced than Pac-Man, right? And she wants to go out. And then she sees this gorilla. Nothing can pull me away from the game, not even the gorilla, which I don't even know he's coming. And so I created a backstory and a relationship and a character just out of who I thought he was. I'm not saying, oh, I worked so hard on that as an actor. It just sort of came to me and let it hit me, and whatever I was as an actor, I did it. And then we had Donkey Kong Jr. that came in afterwards, not quite as popular, but it was just a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, I think that some of what you brought to that character kind of lives on in the DNA. You mentioned the kind of blue collar, backstory and all of that. And you mentioned to me before we went on into our session today that you grew up in somewhat of a blue collar kind of area.
Well, yeah, I grew up in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, which is 3 miles west of Valley Forge. And the old joke goes, it was an iron and steel town. The men iron and the women steel. No, that's the reverse. That's more of like, advanced.
Right.
No, I'm glad I goofed on the joke. Yeah, it's an iron and steel town. The women iron and the men steel. But football. If you ever saw the movie Friday Night Lights, it's about a football town where all the stores close when it's Friday night football game and the stands are packed. And my team that I was on, we were 11-0, and so that's the kind of town it was. Very blue collar. A lot of Hungarian, Ukrainian, Polish immigrants came to that town in the early 1900s. These are the kind of people that I went to school with, and it was Pennsylvania, Jersey, like that. So I knew something about Mario in my history.
You knew a lot of Marios back in the day.
Yeah, I knew a lot of, I knew some Marios. There might have been Dominics. They might have been, Luigi's. I don't think I ever met a guy named Luigi. And look, there was some Jewish guys like that too in Jersey. Just saying,
Sure.
Same kind of thing. Yeah.
I know that you mentioned with Seinfeld, getting back to that, you were disappointed for some 20 years. I know you're sort of joking, but probably not, that you didn't get to continue in that role. What were your feelings about the show, seeing someone else playing that character that you developed? Did those feelings change over time? Did you kind of come to terms with it? That sort of thing.
Well, the first thing is not to blame anybody. That's the first thing. They went a different direction. Maybe I did or said something that they didn't like. I don't know. Richard Fancy is a wonderful actor, and God bless him. If I wasn't going to do it, another good actor got it. I think you'd have to be numb or without a brain or a heart or whatever the other thing is, not to feel down from not continuing in a role that looked promising. But at the same time, I learned over the years to let disappointment go so that it would open the door to new opportunities. And it did.
Would you share with us, how did you get your start in the business, as they like to call it around this part of town?
Oh, that's such a common question, Joey. Can't you come up with anything better than that? I told him to ask me that question. Anyway, my given name is Harold Shorashore. And I remember wanting to get an agent in New York. And when I said my name, they went, what? So, I thought of changing my name to Harold Who, but then I thought they'd think I was Asian, which is fine, but I'm not. And so a buddy of mine gave me the nickname of Harris. So for a second, it was Harris Cherishore. Then I changed it to Harris Shore. And I started to get some work, and I worked part-time in a show business newspaper office. Well, I had just come from being a salesman, as I told you, and I got to New York in September of 1970. And I got a job at the Pig and Whistle restaurant, which is was 48th and 6th at the time, with some other young people that were working there, being a singing waiter. And I remember the audition where I had to lift a woman up, do a lift and dance. So I'd never taken any dance, and I was a pretty strong kind of small town farm kid. And I went to lift her up, and she put her hand on my head, and I had a hairpiece on, and my hairpiece went like that, and I went boom like that, and I got the job, and I straightened that out, and I started inviting agents and managers down. I had this background in sales, and someone came down, and long story shorter, we were asked to put a group together by a manager who booked the Borscht Belt, that's the Catskills in the Poconos. And this is who we were. 4 on the Town. I'm the guy with the cane. So 4 on the Town, which was taken from On the Town, the movie. We put together Broadway and off-Broadway tunes. So I was co-writer, and we wound up working nonstop. And I got to meet all the great comics and all the great acts in the mountains. And then the president of USO was a friend of my family's. We auditioned for them, and we wound up doing one of the 3 greatest moments of my life. And that was entertaining our troops in Vietnam, starting in April of 1972, and in Thailand. Total of 5 weeks of work. And that was really how I got my start, because then a friend of mine brought her agent to see me on stage in one of the hotels, and he got me my manager of blessed memory, Roxy Horan, a woman. And I just started working nonstop. I mean, I've done industrials, over 220 principals and commercials, stage, a lot of stage, just a lot of wonderful. It's been a real blessed career of my own.
I will say this, often when I'm watching a program or a movie and I see someone who, let's just say, has a similar look to you, right? Because actors have to kind of fit certain categories and check certain boxes. I think to myself, man, I wish that was Harris.
Well, thank you.
So why don't you tell us about some other things that you've done in the intervening years?
Intervening years. I took another course direction. I never stopped acting. I became a cantor, graduated in 2008. As far as acting work, gosh, I'm in that movie, The Holiday Calendar, which I have a really nice scene I'm grateful for. Hallmark film that shows a lot during the holidays. I was Joe's doctor on Wings, and this film of mine that I wrote actually for stage out of Theater West, which is where we developed it in the writing workshop, supposed to be a 10-minute piece. And without the credits, it's just a 10 minutes. And that's won awards in 7 countries. Several.
That's the Trust.
The Trust, thank you. The Trust, and one might call it America's pandemic comedy. And while there is nothing funny about COVID or getting COVID, when there is a case of mistaken identity and sparks start to fly, then it's a different kind of story. And people are really responding very well to the acting, to the story, and the dialogue. And it's a mix of 2 different platforms, Zoom and live action. And we have a screening at the 10th Annual Studio City Film Festival this Sunday. You will have missed it because I know, although we're filming it now, it'll show later, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And people will look back on November 6th and go, oh, I wish I'd have gone to that, or I saw that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. A little bit of time traveling for us here.
Sure.
And, I know that it's relevant to your short film. I'm wondering, we've been living in this kind of crazy world. And do you think that that's what kind of added to it? I mean, are you going to be happy when people look back on it and remember this crazy time? And I'm sure that certain parts of it are kind of universally funny, regardless of that context.
Well, I wrote this in the summer of 2021. And by then we were well into the COVID pandemic. And I was hoping that by now it would be a period piece. And although it says in the screen when you start summer 2020, I think, or whatever it says, it's still very current. And there's nothing funny about COVID. And my own daughter, who's immune compromised, she has autoinflammatory illness, did get COVID on top of it all. And we were really worried about her. And so I repeat, there's nothing funny about COVID, but when something happens in a family, when they find out something that they thought was one way and then it happens another way, and the couple of good reviewers picked it up, that it's got a wider context than COVID, my little film, and I'm been developing it and working it. So yeah, I would like to think that in a couple of years, to try to answer your question directly, people will look back and go, yeah, I remember when there was COVID, and it's sort of like all healed and all, it's like, thank God leprosy's not with us anymore, and it's like an old thing. Looks like the virologists are telling us it's gonna be around for a while.
And for our audience, you can find The Trust on YouTube. Harris has been very generous to share it with the world. As he mentioned, it is kind of a smash hit on the short film circuit, and we're all very happy about that. A lot of fun, and like you said, universal on a lot of different levels beyond the kind of shared experience of pandemic. I think the shared experience of living in dysfunctional families and whatever else we all
enrich dysfunctional families.
Well, that would be nice, but money doesn't solve everything. I think that's sort of one of the lessons. It's a morality tale,
sure,
in some ways as well.
I grabbed the morality by the tail.
There you go.
Something like the tiger. All right.
Well, Harris, thanks so much for spending time with us.
I enjoyed it.
We really appreciated catching up with you and all the wonderful things you've done to amuse us as an amusing Jew yourself. And to our audience, thank you for joining us. Now back to your regularly scheduled lives.